Hi everyone, my name is Jessica. Welcome to your JemCon 2020, the virtual Gem Jam, and this is your Music and Gem panel with music you hum and lyrics that rhyme. And we have a panel of amazing Gem fans and Gem enthusiasts here to talk about Gem music. So I want to introduce you to your panel, and I want to start with Becky.
Hey guys, I'm Becky. I am a child of the 80s, so I grew up when the Gem cartoon came out and the dolls. And ever since I want to say first grade, I was going back in my memory, is when I remember getting into Gem and having the dolls. And of course, getting all of those awesome cassettes that came with the dolls. So I must have listened to those tapes over and over again, and I would sing along with them to myself, or I remember like watching the cartoon with my brother and seeing the music videos and really loving them, especially since it was kind of during that era when MTV was getting music videos popularized. So I think it totally developed my love for not only music, but the Gem line itself.
And we also on our panel have Garth.
Hello, how are you guys? So I came to Gem as well in the '80s, growing up as a kid. And shout out to WUTV Buffalo. That was the channel that I watched it on, and usually it was in the mornings before school. So I just loved watching it. It really did feel like a soap opera for kids. So it was like, ooh, just the music and the drama every week. And I also did enjoy the dolls. I had a Gem Jericho when I was a kid. And then for a brief period, a dark period, I felt like, oh, I outgrew that. Oh, I was afraid to be associated because it's very taboo to be a boy into girls' things back in the '80s. I was like, oh, I outgrew Gem. But then when the DVDs came out in 2004, I saw this big wall in the music store and I just thought, oh, Gem, she's back. I need to buy this. And then when I bought those DVDs, it got me into like kind of the second wave of Gem love. And then that led me later on, a few years later, into finding JemCon and just everything celebrating Gem again. So I'm really happy that Gem has had many lives, many identities, many lives.
Thank you, Garth. And also with us today is Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie. I actually had to ask my mom after my first GemCon, so when did I start liking Gem? Because she's always been in my life. So my mom said it was something that she saw on television and thought, oh, maybe you would really like this. And she said it was all over after that. All over after that, and I loved it. My mom would record the show while I was away at kindergarten, and then I'd come home for lunch, and then I would watch the episode that aired in the morning when I was at school. The music of Gem had to be my earliest influence of music. It just awakened that in me. I would listen to the instrumental side of the cassette tapes just over and over and over. And I was listening for the drums and I was listening for bass lines before I even really knew what I was listening for, because I was only 5 or 6 at the time. Mm-hmm. That has then influenced me. I love other 80s music that I still listen to. Even in high school, I was listening to 80s music. So it was definitely a big influence.
So just to get our conversation started, as everybody here knows, and hopefully everybody watching knows, the Gem production was quite a complicated feat. And one of those complications was that there were 2 actors or actresses doing voices, one doing speaking vocals and one doing singing vocals. And the singing team was entirely separate. The singing and music team, they all had almost nothing to do with the rest of the production. Panel, can you share, like, did you know right away that that wasn't the same voice?
The first thing that I had learned was, just as an adult, it may have been before my first GemCon, that the background vocals for the holograms and the Misfits are the same 3 women. I had no idea. So they did their job, and as a child, yeah, they fooled me for sure. The other thing I learned wasn't the music done in New York and wasn't the speaking parts recorded in Los Angeles. So that's my assumption. They put a show together on 2 coasts of the United States. And that's crazy, especially back then. Now the technology, we can do that easily, but that couldn't have been easy back then.
I was totally shocked too. So I feel like I knew nothing when I came to my first JemCon except for the cartoons, the dolls, and the tapes. And like, I didn't even know who we were talking to. I was like, literally, my husband and I came in 2015, and he was like, you know, I think I was just talking to Christy Marks, and I didn't know I was talking to Christy Marks. So, you know, but on some level, it made it like really approachable, and that's something I've always loved about being at JemCon is that we're talking to these people who are, you know, celebrities in this gem world, but they're approachable and really they have shared their lives with us, you know, so graciously.
Well, yeah, and I think that that was the case with me and the DVDs. I had no idea that they were different people until the first DVDs came out, and then they had an interview with Samantha Newark on the first set, and I was like, "Oh, this is who does the speaking voice." And it was even at that time it was confusing because they didn't have an interview with Britta until the second set of DVDs. So I was like, "Oh, so they're two different people?" Like I was just so putting that together was kind of its own fascinating thing. As you know, as and even you know, as the internet started having more information about the show, because there were gaps when there was nothing out there about it, just the show itself. So I found that interesting. And also, as a side note, as a gem boy who happens to be of the LGBT persuasion, I found it fascinating that Bonnie grew up to be a hot, openly gay man. I was like, oh, Ari Gold as the voice of Bonnie, just that kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh, he was a gem boy too, kind of around the same, a little bit older maybe, but around the age that we were watching the show. So just like, oh, and he got to sing on the show as a gem fan, and then you know, just having an experience finding out like, oh, that's really cool that you know, having that connection to someone who was a part of the show themselves.
It is one of, probably I will say, one of my shocker moments, but like shock happy to meet Ari Gold in this. Like, even now though, he can sing "A Father Should Be," and I'm like, I hear it. He's got that. He's got the voice of an 8-year-old Vietnamese girl. I don't know how he does it, but he can. He's got that range.
That blew me away. My first,
when he sang his little jingle, you know, mashup, I was just like, he just sang our childhood in like 2 minutes.
Oh my goodness, I'll have to throw a link to this video for anyone who hasn't seen it. Ari Gold did a lot of the commercial toy jingles. When he was a child, he performed the song in those jingles. And he did My Little Pony, he did My Buddy. It is absolutely.
He did My Buddy?
It's magical.
No way.
Yeah. Magical is the right word. At one JemCon he performed sort of a mashup of a bunch of the jingles he'd done. I think, didn't anyone here correct me, but didn't he also do like Nabisco?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
there were so many. He was like, My Little Pony, My Little Pony. And you hear it and you're just like, I know that voice. I didn't know I knew you. And then suddenly you feel like when you talk to him, you're like, I already knew you.
Well, I know what I'm doing later after this.
And one of the, you know, as we mentioned, like this is a show that's trying to collaborate from coast to coast in a world before there's even email. And so all of this communication breakdown, and yet I still think the storytelling for what it is for an 80s children's show is pretty darn cohesive. And I have a hard time imagining the singers in New York not having any clue about the visuals that are happening with this.
It was just, I think Ellen touched on it a little bit last year at JemCon. It was, that was their job. They were given sheet music. Here, plunk it out. We'll run through it a few times, record, you're done, see you tomorrow.
It's wild.
That's right, Ellen Bernfeld. Yeah.
Ellen Bernfeld, singing voice of pizzazz. She's a treat. She's a hoot.
Yes.
Yes, love Ellen.
So
I was going to say about the storytelling aspect, I know I loved it as a child. And the interesting thing for me was my rediscovery of Gem in my 30s was really exciting because my husband, Chris, actually found the DVDs and he purchased them and gave them to me for Valentine's Day one year. So we started watching them. This was before we found JemCon, and also how we found JemCon was the DVDs. And as the two of us were watching it together, because he hadn't been, you know, exposed to Gem or hadn't remembered watching it. So this was like something I was introducing him to. And we would go from like episode to episode, and the songs really brought me back to my childhood. But then as I'd watch the videos and how they were done, I was like, oh my gosh, this must be why I love rainbows. Oh my gosh, this must be why I love, like, it's got even Alice in Wonderland references here and there, and Raggedy Ann and Wizard of Oz. And I was just like, it was like as if my life came full circle. And I was just like, wow, like those childhood years must have been so formative, because like I said, everything that I loved and all the colors I loved and everything just like plopped into a cartoon, and like life made sense.
Does anyone else have like a music video that you sort of can't get out of your head that you remember from the show?
Can't Get My Love Together. That one, I was like 7 years old, and I'm like, she's so sad and so torn, and like I got it as a kid. Again, the storylines were pretty sophisticated for being children's shows, but they expected you to go up to that level instead of being talked down to, which I think is a big issue with kids programming now. Myself having 2 small children, and I watched kids television programming for the last 9 years. I'm like, they're talking down to you guys. They think you're stupid, and I'm like, Em didn't do that. She's like, we're gonna do this bit in more involved storyline, and yeah, you were expected to just kind of catch up to that and just get it, and that's what I liked about it. But yeah, I think Can't Get My Love Together. What other? She's Got the Power. I love that video.
I think it was Come On In, where Jem became a mermaid, and I was like,
Yes,
I want to be a mermaid too.
Well, also, and speaking of, not talking down to kids, there is some lust in that video. When you see Rio, she's like waving to Rio to come into the water, and then they're kind of looking at her.
But
and, like,
again, as a kid, you don't get that. That just kind of goes over your head. So it was a perfect mashup of a little more sophisticated, but you're not gonna get it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. It was still a mystique, like,
The mature
he
content.
just wants to swim.
Like, oh, they're just gonna go swimming. That's totally fine.
And find treasure.
I want to go swimming with mermaids. I wanted to go swimming with mermaids.
Oh, I know.
Garth, anything stand out for you?
I love the video for It All Depends on the Mood I'm In. The first one, both are actually brilliant. Both are amazing. The first one I love because Jem is this inner glamour element. She's this, is sassing around, and the way at one point there's the boa, the lasso, which gave me some Wonder Woman feels. I was like, ooh, she's got the boa as the lasso. And then the second video where the animation sketches come to life. And so it's like you're seeing the sketches, doing the dance moves and choreography. And then also the Off I Go in Search of Adventure, where there's private eyes in the car. And I was like, ooh, okay, this is interesting. So those 2 videos, I like them a lot.
I'll probably splice in here an image because I have the storyboard for that first It All Depends on the Mood I'm In music video.
Oh, nice.
And there is just that, which we all know from that music video. It's like, or else I wear my blue suede shoes. And she's doing that little like pose she's up on her toes and everything. And it literally is just this full panel shot of her in that pose. And up below it just says shoes. And I feel like that's been my life.
All about the shoes.
Right. Oh my God, shoes.
That's
and
amazing.
I thought that with that particular pose where she's up on the toes was very Michael Jackson at the time. I'm like, that is a Michael Jackson move, and that's so awesome.
There was so much, I think, part of the sophistication with the music videos, and it speaks to what you mentioned, Katie, that they weren't talking down to you, is that they were pretty equivalent to what was on MTV.
At the time, absolutely.
They were darn conceptual and outrageous.
And in a cartoon, you can get away with that. Anything's possible.
I think that, as I mentioned too in the beginning, drew me in because like MTV was just kind of coming into focus, and I had an older cousin who I thought was really cool named Jason, and he's actually a DJ now, which I think is awesome. So he's the one who kind of like showed me my first MTV music videos, and then I was like, put that together. I'm like, wow, the Jem really has that parallel, because they would start it out the same way too, right? They would give you the name of the song and the band when they like appear when you're doing the video and the cartoon. And I was like, I kind of put those things together. I think it was like, that helped me really cement like, oh, this song is called, Only the Beginning by Jem and the Holograms or something,
Yep.
you know, and it was just like I was cataloging as we went. I think in the cartoon, I was like already getting my musical repertoire in my head.
Yeah,
Love
my
it.
first music video on MTV was Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles.
Yes, that was
And
good.
I was little. I was like, 5 or 6 years old, but I think my dad had turned that on and he's like, oh, these girls are so cool. And I'm just like, Jem came to life for me. I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And then I think Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, really ingrained in my childhood, and music from the Jets as well. I'm like, yeah, that was all Jem at the time.
Well, and I feel like Jem, had the little Dream Tour cassette.
Oh, I love it.
The bands, of the times, and I thought that was really awesome too. I made sure to send in for that. So you said the Jets, Katie. I was like, I'm pretty sure there was a song on here from the Jets.
I think so, yeah.
Yep. Crush on You. I got a
Love that
crush
song.
on you.
I used to sit
cool
there
that
with
Jem
the
is on there with them. Like she's got, tracks on the tape with the bands.
That's awesome. I used to sit with the tape recorder up to the TV and record the audio from the television. And I did
that.
I don't know why I did that, but I did that and I thought it was so cool. And I thought I was so smart because I figured out if I turn the volume up on the recording device, I pick it up better from the television. And I thought I was.
I absolutely did the same thing. In terms of the merchandise, I sort of came to the dolls and things pretty late, but I remember I never had one that was like bought off the shelf. It was all like Goodwill or secondhand or something. So I didn't have any of the cassettes for a while. And then suddenly I just remember being handed a cassette and I'm just like, wait, so this has been recorded? Like you could have just given me the cassettes the whole time. I didn't have to record the television. Right. But then I found out that not all the songs are recorded, and that's not fair. But so I didn't have the cassettes. Did you guys have the cassettes growing up?
I did.
I sure do.
I have the first cassette. Like I think the only doll I actually had as a kid was the JemCon. So I had the first tape, and that was it. But I knew the songs from the show just from watching the show all the time. So that's what was funny later on, finding out like, oh, there were so many more songs than I thought there were. So it's interesting to like, and the cassettes also had some slight variations as well. Like sometimes they had a little extra instrumental added in to pad it out a little bit more, and then the show was like tighter. Like I think the Truly Outrageous on the show, it cuts one of the high notes near the end, and the cassette version has the full bar unedited. So there's some cool slight variations if you have the cassette versus the television versions.
Now, thank goodness for my mother, because her kind of thinking was, well, if you're going to play with these, because I didn't play with Barbie at all, and I didn't even really play with dolls except Jem. Those were the only ones I played with. So her thinking was, well, if you're going to have the bands, you may as well have the full sets. So I had the full set of the Jem and the holograms and all three Misfits. So I had all of those original cassettes. I don't know where they are now. I'm sure they were destroyed and thrown out, but dolls I still have.
So I do actually have a great story about my cassette tapes. A couple of different ones. The one I know I'd shared the picture with Jessica when I was younger. I don't remember how I got all of the dolls. I have a few memories, and most of them are my grandparents actually coming to visit and giving me Jem dolls, me and my brother actually. So I have a brother who's 2 years younger, and we were always given like the same type of toy. Yep. So there's me and my brother Tim. And I know it's hard for you to see from the side, but like I'm actually wearing my Jem sweatshirt in that picture.
See it.
So I was like so excited. I
amazing.
found this while actually doing my mom's retirement party, and I was putting together some slideshows and things. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so awesome. Like this is just like gold. So yeah, we used to take the dolls and we would position them in front of the speakers and on top of the cassette player, which is behind my brother. And there's even looks like a cassette like by Jem. And then we would like put the tapes into the cassette player and start it, and our dolls would be giving a concert.
And you had video. I'm jealous.
Well, those dolls, I don't know what it was because I wasn't big on Barbie either, even though I had a few, but like those dolls are something I knew as soon as I got them, they were like precious to me. Like I cherished every single one. I still have every single one of my like dolls from my childhood years, and the only one that's in really sad shape is my brother's glitter and gold Rio because he doesn't even have hands anymore, and he is like so beyond.
My Rio doesn't have hands. My original Rio doesn't have hands. They snapped off.
I know. So like I had Jem in the dollhouse. My brother had Rio in the log cabin, and we used to always like play with the dolls, put on concerts. But like I remember I had my dolls and I took really good care of them. And as I went from childhood to adulthood, you know, they went wherever I went. And you know, unfortunately my parents divorced when I was in junior high, and I don't know why I didn't take the tapes with me. So years later, when I like finally got a house and thought, oh, I can get out of all my doll stuff out and start displaying things and playing again, you know, because I have room to like put them out. Before that, things were kind of stored for a few years. I realized I didn't have the tapes. And I was like super bummed that I didn't have the tapes along with my dolls because I knew I had them. But when I was younger, I remember it was like a really big deal one year when our family got like a stereo system, like a big, you know, unit with huge speakers that went in like our front, like kind of foyer sitting room. And like my dad had a big double decker like cassette tape holder. And so I would keep all of my Gem tapes were in there with the family music. So one day I was like out of the blue had remembered that's where they were. So then I'm like, Dad, do you know where my tapes are? Like, now I know where they are. Where's that cassette holder? And he was like, I don't know. He's like, we've moved so many times. Like, I'm not sure where they are. And then out of the blue, he like calls me up one day and's like, I found your tapes. And I was just like so excited. I was like in my 30s probably. And I was just like, oh my gosh, the master tapes, you know, like,
Yeah.
So then I get the tapes, and my husband is just like watching me play these cassette tapes on my old clock radio from grade school because, you know, it still worked. And I would like play each side, flip it over, play the side, flip it over. And he's like, poor girl, I need to help her. And since he's like computer savvy, he starts getting on the internet and is like, I'm going to find a way to make her a CD. So eventually we did get some music onto like CD form so that I didn't have to continually flip everything over. But I will tell you, every single one of my tapes works and it's amazing. And I'm never getting rid of that for you.
Oh, wow.
I've got them all. But all the dolls I had, I have them all.
And then to fast forward, what was I like? I was probably end of high school, beginning of college when Napster was the thing. And I said, I wonder if anybody has Gem songs. And I kept finding them and I was ecstatic. And he was my boyfriend at the time, but my husband was like, why? This is crazy. I'm like, dude, you don't understand. Somebody, there are other people out there. And I was so excited to get those. And I still listen to those MP3s that I downloaded from Napster all those years ago.
For a while, it was really hard to find all the songs together because there were later episodes that weren't as widely, like when the first DVDs came out, they didn't finish the series. So a lot of the singer songs were hard to find. A lot of other songs from the later seasons were gone. So one of the sites that actually led me to JemCon, Gem Things and Stuff, run by Bob out of the UK. That was one of the most amazing Gem sites I'd ever discovered. And I was just like, and it was right when I was like, I was on a hunt for the singers episodes because I thought, oh, well, you know, I have these DVDs, but they're not complete. Can I find, you know, like, can I find these mysterious episodes that I didn't know much about the singers? And then when I started looking for those episodes, that I found the Gem Things and Stuff. And I was like, there's a convention called JemCon? And I was like, what? I must know more about this. And then also when I learned about the site too, is that they made it, you know, it was the first time that I discovered that you could separate the music tracks and there were acapellas that you could pull from the DVDs. And I was like, you can do this? I thought it was all mixed together and you couldn't separate anything. So
this is a thing, Garth, you keep telling me about, and I still think you're a wizard.
No. I have to give credit to Gem Things and Stuff and the mitigating and all, like, well, also because on the Gem Things and Stuff website, she gave very detailed instructions on how to actually use software to pull the tracks to your computer, find the audio streams, and then separate out the center channel. But the center channel is where the vocals and dialogue usually are, where the music is in the other channel. So if you get the center channel, it doesn't work perfectly every time. Sometimes it is all kind of mixed, so you can hear music in the background. But in general, you can get enough of an acapella out there to make a remix or a mashup. So you can find that in, if you have the, I think it's, what is it? Audacity is one of the programs that I've been using. And that was one of the ones I found through Gem Things and stuff. And what I love too is at her website too, if you just wanted the tracks, you had all the tracks, including the singers one. So you could find just the regular MP3s, or you can get the acapellas. You had to solve a puzzle to get to the acapellas. So you're like, Roxy has torn up this, this list of songs, put it back together, and then you can get access to the music, or play the first notes of the Gem Girl theme, and then and then you had to play it on a virtual keyboard to get access to the instrumental. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. So you have, these things like encouraging you to solve a puzzle before you get to the music, and that made it all the more exciting when you got to the music after that. So Gem Things and stuff.
I would love to hear isolated vocals.
Some of the results we got from our surveys, just sort of wanted to have a space for everybody to share their opinions. And so while we have this panel available, I want to see if we can just go around and share some of our opinions about the music in the tried old tradition of most favorite, least favorite. So I'd like to see if we could start off with a favorite song. Garth, what's your favorite?
I would say I have to name two because like Gem and the Misfits. For Gem, I would say it all depends on the mood I'm in, because it just felt so like modern 80s pop. Like this is like, ooh, like and especially if you listen to the music in the background, it's like got these like keyboard flourishes. They're just it's like, ooh, this is like, like put this on in between Whitney Houston and Madonna. It's like, ooh. And so I love that one. And then Misfits, Universal Appeal is just such an iconic song, just because that has its own modern kind of, and it's just like the attitude, like the right in the beginning. I'm like, ooh, like sell it to me, pizzazz, sell it to me. So I just, both of those songs are my favorites.
Katie, I'm going to go to you. Favorites?
Probably favorite Gem song is I Got My Eye on You, because even as a little kid, that was sassy. That was a really sassy song. And, and again, that was one of the first times I heard a bass line without really knowing what I was listening to. But I'm like, what is that sound I'm hearing? It's really cool. Misfits song, I probably do have to agree with Universal Appeal. Again, the bass line in that song is absolutely incredible. I do love Taking It All because I love the guitar in that one.
Hey, Becky, favorite songs?
So I don't know if I can really call something a favorite because I love them all, and I agonize about this. But I would say for sure from my childhood, when the cartoon and I had the tapes and everything, I listened to the song with dance when it's only me and the music. So that one I remember like over and over again. I was really like just drawn to that song, I think, because I wanted to be a ballerina and I love music. And I was like a really kind of like introverted child too. So it was like that song really, I just sit in my room and listen to that tape like again and again and again. But I think like as I got older and like watched the stuff and listen to the music again, the singers are what like totally drew me in. Like I saw Riot and relived that and was like, oh my God, I am forever under his spell. And like especially me and Chris, like Destiny, we just like loved that song. The second we heard Destiny, I was like, oh, this is one of my favorites. And he found a way to like get that on a CD so I could just like throw it on one repeat and go crazy. I don't know if it's a tangent or a confession or what it is, but like when I was a kid too, I was like obsessed with the band Whitesnake, and David Coverdale was my heartthrob.
Gosh, he is Riot.
And then I saw Riot and I was like, oh my God,
Riot.
the world makes sense. Like, he's my cartoon version of like my music rock star heartthrob. And it was like, I also found this video somewhere once upon a time when I was just like Googling stuff on the internet, and it was my all-time favorite song from Whitesnake is This Love, done to a video, like cartoon video mashup with Gem and Riot, and I was just like, I knew I loved him for a reason. I knew.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and what's really funny, you guys, is I don't know what came over me, but something made me look at my childhood diaries this last week or so. And not only did I have like a moment where I drew a picture of dance in my diary, I also wrote about that very song from Whitesnake, and I was just like, yep, it's all there, black and white. Like, my memory's not failing me. So yeah, I think there was like so many connections on so many levels that it's kind of like it's been a little scavenger hunt for me as an adult to put the pieces together, and it's been so much fun to kind of like figure out myself, you know, later in life. Go, oh, why did I like this? Oh, this makes so much sense, you know. So I had to share that too because he was my Whitesnake fave.
Oh, nice. Well, speaking of, I want to add a little asterisk to the Stingers conversation because I thought the duet "Believe, Don't Believe" is kind of an amazing, funky song. Like, the way that Riot comes in all slick, and he's like, "Oh yeah, believe in me," and like, just like, "Oh, believe it," and the way they go back and forth is kind of like oh, it's a sexy, sassy duet. And they're like, "Oh, okay, I like that."
On so many of the duo songs, either especially when it's Gem versus the Misfits, because again, like those background vocals are the same people. So you're really, I mean, number one, actually, if you're listening to it, you will hear the way that they work to make those different bands sound differently. But it also kind of, to me, highlights the differences between Britta and Ellen singing. Those two, they're both super powerful, but you get something like Click Clash going, and it's just, it feels like a fight.
My sister said I think it was on the way to Buffalo, she said, listen, we were listening to Click Clash. She goes, listen to this song. She knows more about music theory than I do. I'm not very good at it. I took one class in high school and it was awful. Anyway, but she goes, listen, they changed time signature in the song. I'm like, that's nuts. She's like, they have to put in an extra beat to then get to the speed of Clash, and then they bring it back for Click. I'm like, that is absolutely nuts. This poor drummer.
Oh my goodness. Well, so there is always an opposite. So dare I ask folks favorite song? Katie, do you have a song that's not your favorite or that you can't stand?
Least favorite, Jazz Has. I hate that song. Like, sweetie, no, you can't scat.
I know, right?
Knock it off.
Oh no.
I absolutely hate that song.
I can get behind you there. Becky, anything that's not your favorite?
Honestly, I think sometimes the little bit of that abrasive feel in the Click Clash isn't my favorite, but I really don't feel like I dislike any song. And one that comes to my mind kind of is like not a least favorite necessarily, but like a funny, like Chris and I sometimes make fun of the song of taking a train, because it's like over and over again. It's just
like, I get it, you're taking a train.
Right, but it's like so bad it's good. It's like, one of those, you're like, at first you kind of make fun of it as like, really, and then you're just like, then you're like enjoying it. So, but I really can't say there's anything I don't like I love them all.
Garth, anything not your cup of tea?
Well, I wonder. I feel like it's unfair because it's a Starlight Girl, but I find that Ashley's "I can see me on the TV. I can see me. I can see me. I can." It's like, okay, she's like a JoJo Siwa. She's just like, oh, she's a stage kid. Oh, like,
yeah.
Just like, I can see me. I want to be in the show, Mister. I can see me. Like, okay, Ashley, it's okay. Don't worry. The audition's happening tomorrow. But I felt like, out of all the Starlight Girls songs, it's like the other two told really interesting stories about the plot. Like, it's like, oh, Chrissy, you may be a star. She's putting this egotistical star in his
putting
place.
this kid in his place.
Father should be. It's like, oh, it's this touching story about she's desperate for her father, and then it's like, I can't see. And like one of these things doesn't quite fit the flow of like, oh, Ashley just is self-involved. Okay.
I've stopped stealing from the honor jar, but it's still about me.
He wants to steal the show now, not the honor jar. And then Gem song wise, I found that Everybody Wears a Mask has one of the most unusual melodies to me, where it sounds like, I don't want to say droning, but it's just like everybody wears. It just has these weird like changes in melody that I didn't really grab onto that as much as I did the other songs. I agree with the message. Yes, everyone should wear a mask
right now, but I agree with you. It's got a little bit of the drone. Well, and actually, when I was putting together the idea for this panel and coming up with our title for the panel, because we at JemCon we always like to have kitschy little gem-related titles, and Garth recommended a current YouTube series, A Middle-Aged Man Watches Gem.
I love him.
It's awesome. It's
Monday and Thursday, I'm watching his videos. He is hilarious.
So if you haven't seen it, folks, I'll put a link. You have to go see it. But there's a point where he's watching all the shows and he's giving you a reaction to each individual show. And when he does the Broadway Magic episode, he talks about that lyric. It's music you hum, lyrics that rhyme. And he's like, that's exactly.
Oh, I hope so.
And it stuck with me so hard because on the one hand, I have absolutely been finger snapping and thigh clapping to that song for those years, but at the same time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of what you want all songs to have.
Yeah, like I never thought of that until he said it. I was like, right.
Until he said it, I'm like, oh yeah. Well, when you point it out as a grown-up, yeah, it sounds lame, but you know, when I was 6 or 7, that was pretty cool.
And what I like too is about his series, he gets very technical with the music in the way that I couldn't, where he talks about the specific notes they're hitting and the
I have no clue. Yeah. He's like, oh, well, this is an E5. I don't know what that is. Yeah. Whatever.
It's an E, because I said E when I heard it. E. The one thing I will say is that even though it was like tough to put together that much music for a series for that many episodes, I found that top of the charts to me was like, we're in the late 80s now. It had such a distinctly different sound to the beginning of the song. Like in the early Gem songs, they almost had like kind of a disco-y feel, like a dream or Twilight in Paris, that funky kind of like, okay, this is kind of like the disco spillover. And then we get to top of the charts, it's hand claps, electronic keyboards, this driving kind of beat, like, get out of my dreams. It's like that kind of late 80s pop. So I'm like, okay, so I found that interesting. Near the end, they had that burst of like, we're going to show you like some modern, the Misfits get to the top of the charts with this hot new synthesized sound.
Yeah, that's something that Ellen, the singing voice of Pizzazz, has pointed out, that when she's been asked what some of her favorite songs to sing are, she's like, wow, that was such a change in what everything she'd been singing up till that point, and all of a sudden top of the charts comes out. It's like, that's a very different song for the Misfits. Oh, very cool. Well, speaking of the Misfits, this is even a harder question than least favorite. Does anyone want to weigh in on whose songs are better?
To me, it's always been apples and oranges. They are different. They're just different. You can't pick which one is better because they're both good in their own right. Where they're both rock, Gem is more poppy, and the Misfits are a bit more hard. They're not quite metal, but they're harder rock. And they're both very good. So in my opinion, you can't say one is better than the other.
I have a hard time picking too. And like I said, I mean, I think the more fascinating thing for me later was finding the Stingers songs, because those were just like, they were familiar because of the time period and, still growing up in the 80s. But at the same time, they felt so brand new again to me that I just like fell in love with those songs. And that was what I was fixated on for the longest time, because it was something new. And Gem and the Misfits were like still awesome and familiar, but I was just like, I was entranced by the singer stuff. I was like, how could I have not like remembered this, the music from this? But once again, I kind of credit my having the tapes for all those years and being able to go back to the tapes, whereas never getting the chance to have the Stingers tapes.
I agree. It's a very hard question to answer because I love Jem for being like she's the virtuous the hero where she's doing things the right way. But on the other hand, sometimes their songs can get a little lessony, like be good, don't be bad, and they're like, oh, okay. And then the Misfits are kind of like, yeah, we don't care, we're taking over. And they almost had more like with songs like Designing Women. They almost had more of a feminist, like, we don't care about this structure. We're going to come in and take over and do it our way. So even though episode wise, you can't really get on their side for being evil, the song wise, I'm like, okay, the messages are a little more like, yeah, we're going to take over as women doing it ourselves. And I thought, okay, that's kind of a cool message too. Like, the contrast of like the different ways of achieving your goal.
I always took the song Designing Women, even as a kid. Designing Woman is a message of make things happen. Things aren't just going to happen for you. Go out there and knock some stuff down and make your way. I always took that song as a positive and not a negative.
As we're talking, and standing out to me is the way the music evolved. You got to know each band, differently. And the one that's like really coming to me right now is the Lovesick song where Pizzazz falls in love with Riot. And I love how that song actually takes her and makes her so vulnerable for the first time. You see that, like, yeah, while she has had to kind of put on this front, and I think she's really wanted Daddy's love more than Daddy's wallet, she has always had to be that person who has taken charge, who gets what she wants because she has to take care of herself. And suddenly Riot comes into the picture and she's like, oh, wow, I want to be vulnerable and I want to take care of someone. I want to like love someone. And so I think it's really cool how the songs, trying to like take us through the personality of the different bands and characters up until the end, and that kind of just stuck out to me right now.
Well, so I will expand the music questions in terms of what we consider gem music. I don't want to be controversial, but there is music produced from the movie, and there is music on the movie not really the movie soundtrack. There was a gem inspiration compilation called Truly Outrageous. I've come to learn that maybe not everybody has heard of it, so feel free to tell me you haven't heard of it. But any thoughts or feelings about how stuff got, I don't even want to say translated, like reimagined, the music in these modern things, how it's been reimagined?
Bait and switch. No, I'm just I felt like, well, no, because I love, I say this as a fan of the movie. I actually did like the Gem movie a lot, and I love the original songs that went with the movie. But then when I got the Truly Outrageous, here's some songs that use the titles of the Gem songs reimagined, I thought it had so much more potential because I liked some of I think the Glitter and Gold was one of my favorites because that used some of the same lyrics. But then I thought it was weird to just have like a Jason Mraz-esque, like all in the style. I woke up
that
today
one.
it just,
like I like that. I like that singer. I forget what his name is right now, but I like him as a singer. And clearly there was a song that was a good song, and it sounded like his producers told him, like, you have to make the chorus all in this style. You have to just include that in the chorus. And he's like, okay, it has nothing to do with the song, but I'll do it because you pay me. It's very awkward.
Yeah, that's what I think it was, because it wasn't that the people or the songs were necessarily bad. It's just they had that assignment that we can't use the original lyrics or melodies, so we have to find a way of like kind of making it sort of a Gem tribute in title only with a few lyrics thrown in so that you don't completely forget what song it is. I don't think it satisfied either base, like people looking for cool new music or people who wanted Gem tributes.
No, I have not heard of this compilation album at all. I did finally see the movie reluctantly. I'm like, all right, I'm going to bite the bullet here, give it a go. If it was a standalone movie by itself, it probably wasn't that bad. But because they were trying to update something that's already been established, I think it missed the mark for a whole bunch of reasons that I won't go into. But the singing, I do think the actresses that sang in that movie were very good. I think they were very good, and more could and should have been done with that. I think with Gem, you gotta leave the songs alone. That's my thing. Is I like them for a reason. Don't mess with it.
I did see the movie, and I really did enjoy the songs that were in the Gem movie, but it was like I wouldn't have thought of them as Gem songs that necessarily. They were like awesome pop songs that I totally enjoyed, would listen to again, but it didn't have that like 80s charm and magic that made the songs originally so compelling. So I think it is hard to update that without, losing some of that charm. But I don't know. The only one who I know can live up to that is Garth. Garth's remixes all the way.
Thank you.
You bring up a great point, Becky, and I want to talk a little bit to Garth about the music that he produces and mixes. If anybody watching this is not familiar with some Garth Gem mixes, I will ensure that there are some links available for your listening pleasure when this gets posted to our virtual JemCon. But Garth, let's assume everybody's heard one or two of your mixes, and we all love you because that's true. Tell us something about how you came to putting these songs together.
Well, yeah, so that's kind of what happened when I found the Gem Things and Stuff website, because I had no idea you could even get acapellas for Gem. So I was like, ooh. So I had them for a while, and I was still too nervous to do anything. First couple of years, I was like, it's great to have them, but I'm just not quite, I don't know what I could do. And then at JemCon 2010. After I saw Britta Phillips singing live, I was like, I need to do something. I was disappointed in myself. Like, I didn't have anything, no remixes prepared for that year. I didn't try. So that after seeing Britta sing like that live, I was like, yeah, I need to do something. So then I just started dabbling, and the first remix I did was "Come On In, the Water's Fine," because I thought that sounded very disco to me. So then I found a sample that was kind of like the Diana Ross "Love Hangover," and I thought, okay, let's disco it up a notch. And then from there, it just each year I started thinking, oh, what can I do with this? And what I heard there was a song that sampled "Sweet Dreams," Eurythmics, and I thought, and in my mind I was like, there's a melody played. So I was like, so sometimes I'll just hear a song and then start singing another song over it. Making Mischief is one of my favorite stories. I don't think it was one of my best mixes, but I was on a boat full of shirtless men dancing, and the DJ played an Erasure remix. And then I ran over and I started singing to my friends. I was like, Mischief, we're making mischief. And all these men dancing. So I was like, okay, that's the inspiration. So sometimes I just find inspiration hearing other songs and just, can this work together? And sometimes people give me suggestions, where one time TJ suggested he thought it'd be cool to hear like "I Got My Eye on You" with Lucky Star, and I did a test, and I was like, it doesn't quite work. And then when I was mentioning it to Ankur, he said, "Oh yeah, Into the Groove." Because I was saying, and then I was like, "Oh, Into the Groove." I didn't think of that, and then it worked together. So I was like, so just inspiration for people, bouncing ideas off of people, and hearing songs that remind me of melodies from Gem, and just seeing if it works. Sometimes it's just seeing what sticks and just trying it and being experimental. And I have to give credit to all the people who have done remixes before me online. Because on YouTube, I was shocked when I was getting back into Gem after the DVDs came out, seeing that I think there's like DVF France, there was DJ Fudge, there was a lot of people who do their own mixes, and then that inspired me to see like, oh, these people doing these mixes, very cool. And it gave me the idea that, yeah, there are people who are passionate about doing new versions of Gem songs. And even Kai Woodland, he does like remasters of the songs where he's and mitigating, discovered the master tapes. So we got to hear a lot. Like, they was mitigating who uploaded the acapella. They're off of YouTube now. He uploaded the acapella of the theme song. And just to hear the clarity of Gem and the Misfits, no background music, just the theme song pure and just by itself, I was like, this is incredible. So yeah, it was pretty. So just the idea of playing with these things and being able to even try something blew my mind. And I just have to try to do something.
Katie or Becky, have you guys tried any performance or any music? I'll leave it at that.
I have not tried any, but I know my husband, Chris, is the one who wants to try his hand at that at some point. But I can see, just listening to your description, Garth, like, my brain would work like your brain, because like I have serious music catalogs in my head, and when I was younger, actually, I really, really loved Weird Al Yankovic, and I would say I still love him
I
now.
still love him.
And oh my God, like my brother and I would be listening to a song and like suddenly we'd be writing a parody. We're like, yeah, we got the melody, we hear this current song and we're changing the words. So like I could see myself having some of that like inspiration and creative part of it, but the technical side is like feels very foreign to me and like I want to know what to do, but I could bring you the ideas maybe, Garth.
But I think that's what's cool about it is that it inspires us to be musical in so many different ways. Like we all have a passion for the music and how it's resonated in our lives. Just like even just the way it sticks in your head, the melodies are so indelible. That just like okay, well, we just you can hear it in other things.
Music is something I've just always loved, and I'm sure that Jem was a big part of like propelling me forward later in life because I was from the moment I could be, I was in band at school, I was in choir. I played the flute and the piccolo all through college. And you know, and it's one thing like I will never give up. I'm not in a like current band right now, but I've thought about, you know, getting that flute back out. But I did get to the level where I actually bought a professional flute and it's like one of my prized possessions and I will never regret all that I've learned from music and everything that it's really taught me because it's more than just reading notes. Like for me, music is something I feel. I'm like, I'm way better like hearing a song and playing it and giving the emotion behind it than I am at like looking notes and counting. Don't ask me to count things. I can write it down for you and get it right, but it's in my head. Like that's what I feel thing.
Myself, I am. You would like to hope that because of my influence of Jem that I would be this great musician. I'm not. Not good at it at all, but it is something I thoroughly enjoy. I like to sing, although I'm not that great at it. I did join band in 6th grade and I played flute as well. So I did middle school band for 3 years and then got to marching band in high school, and playing halftime at all of the football games was so incredible. And the fight song every time we scored a touchdown, and you know, playing in horrible weather and you know the snow and the rain and all of that was just so wonderful. I did eventually join choir and show choir my senior year of high school. My sophomore year is when I started dabbling a little bit into musical theater. So I would do like the high school musical, and I did 2 summers at our community theater at the time doing a couple shows. So that's where music influenced me, but I have not performed at all, really, other than karaoke at JemCon since high school.
Kids out there watching this, learn your instruments, learn your music.
But is there anything anyone is following in the current music sphere that's gotten them excited, or are we all stuck in the 80s?
Big time. I've been stuck in the 80s since high school. And, you know, there's a song maybe here and there that comes out that, okay, I kind of like that, but I'm like, I'm now at the point where I'm looking back at my childhood and my parents going, oh, this is really awful stuff. And now I'm there where my kids are listening to stuff. I'm like, no,
yeah.
It's really terrible.
I was gonna say the same thing, Katie. Like I feel like I'm totally dating myself when I'm just like, what is this thing junk the kids are listening to these days? Like, but then again, like I don't know. When I grew up, not only did I love the 80s and 90s, you know, music from my day, but like music was such a huge thing in my household. Like my mom and dad both really loved music. And like my dad had all his old records, my mom's records, we had 8 tracks, we had like, and I loved diving back into music. Like, and my dad, that was a really big like thing between the two of us, is he would always say, hey Becky, I got this new CD, I want you to hear this track. Like, hey, listen to this. And like, I don't know, that was just like part of my upbringing. So music was just second nature, and it just felt like when Jem came along, it just kept building on that for me.
Well, I find for modern stuff, I like things that kind of sound retro. Like I like Dua Lipa because she's kind of, her new album is very like disco and dance influenced, and even her song "Physical" is kind of like, I can hum New Attitude over it. Let's get physical. Ooh, 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 I got a new attitude. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of like, so that retro dance, or even like Lady Gaga, like Rain on Me sounds like a classic 90s house song. So I was like, oh, okay, I like that. And then new music from old acts. Like, I'm like, oh, Bananarama's back with something, or oh, like Kylie Minogue, yay! So I find it's like my taste is kind of locked into the artists that I loved from back in the day, and then a sprinkling of newer ones, like, and also Jonas Brothers. I'm a sucker for a dance song.
So I guess I've always loved exploring new music too. I think that's one thing I would say about me as an adult more than a kid, is that I have become more open to like other genres and styles, and like I think that's been kind of cool to see how music too has become over the years, like more crossover type stuff or blending has happened, because before it was like, oh, country is country and pop is pop, and then you start getting crossover artists like Shania Twain and Faith Hill, and it's like, then you start getting to where everyone's like, oh, I can appreciate elements of this and elements of that.
Yeah, I've definitely been I'm the opposite, actually. I think I'm more closed off to, like, I know what I like. And if I don't hear what I like, then I'm not going to like it. There's that new song The Weeknd has, Blinded by the Light. I actually do like that song because it sounds like it's from 1986.
Yeah.
That's why I like this song.
Very good. Well, this is lovely. I think we're at time. Before we close out, I'm just going to see a round robin of our panelists. If you have any sort of final thoughts you want to add, I'm going to start with Becky.
Oh, okay. Well, I have really enjoyed talking to all of you about the music from Jem and the 80s. And I would say if you are someone who hasn't listened to your Jem songs lately, get them out. And, I think they are still some of my favorite, most empowering songs. They're there for you when you're having sad days. They're, there for you when you got a long drive in the car. You just want to like make that time fly. And I am super grateful for really everything that I feel like the songs have done for me. Like, they were music to that era, has given me like a soundtrack for my life still, and was like something that was really a comfort when I was a kid. Like, I know I had moments where I was a lonely kid, and like I put those tapes on and I did not feel alone at all. And they still bring that like nostalgia and sentiment back to me now. Like, they are probably one of the most precious things of my collection. And I know I have some CDs now with tracks on there, but like those tapes are just like, I don't know, there's something special about them. Like, I will never get rid of them. So I just want to share my appreciation for the music, and glad that other people out there are loving it as much as I am.
How about you, Garth? Any last thoughts?
I was going to say thank you for having us all today. It has been wonderful chatting with you. It's been like a dream. So I just want to thank you all for sharing your memories and experiences, because it's been fun to just see how many special memories we all have in our own ways, and just how that unites us. Love unites us. This love of Jem music. So thank you all.
And Katie?
I would just like to say thank you for inviting me to be on here. I have loved seeing you. Really, I am most thankful for JemCon. I am so glad I went to my first one just a couple years ago, because that was the first time probably in my life I walked into a room and I said, these people get me. These are my people. And it's been so wonderful to have something like this to bond over, and it's been wonderful. And yes, the music has been a part of my life pretty much all of my life, and it will continue to be a part.
So I'm very appreciative for everyone's time today and for joining us. Now I'm going to switch modes and just say hey to you at home. This is your music panel for the virtual JemCon 2020, the virtual Gem Jam, and we are a community. We would love to hear your thoughts about the music or any special memories you have. We're going to be posting this on all of our social medias, so feel free to engage with us. This may be the best way for us to engage right now, but it will not always be the thing, and we look forward to seeing anybody who can join us in 2021 in Minneapolis for the next JemCon.
Oh, and wait, one more thing. Thank you to Liz Pemberton for creating JemCon for all of us. Shout out.
Yes.
We love you, Liz. Everybody loves you. All right, folks. Thank you, everybody, and have a great time, day or night, wherever you are.